Yeah, it's your boy Ray on the mic. Let's go.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Ray White on the mic with Ray White. I'm excited to be back with you all on the whiteboard. Yes, breaking down some concepts that have been pivotal for me that I want to share with you all on this podcast as well, and just another opportunity to practice my writing, my penmanship, if you will, because my chicken scratch is not the business. But here's the thing. We switched up from the other episode because I was sitting on that side, realized sitting on that side doesn't really help for my writing. So we're going to see if sitting on this side is going to help with that. But regardless, here's the concept that I want to be able to share with you all on this episode. And if you find any value in this episode, please buy me a coffee. That's it. Just buy me a coffee. Hit me up, buy me a coffee, and then maybe we have an opportunity to connect as well, and just to chat and be in community in that way as well. But let's dive into this particular episode, which is one of my favorite phrases hearing when I was growing up. The world does not revolve around you. Shout out to my mama. Shout out to my mama. Growing up, my mom used to say this phrase to me all the time. Whenever there was an instant or a event where I felt selfish, where I felt like I needed everybody else to wait on hand and feet for me, to serve me, and she would put some reality check in my life and say, the world doesn't revolve around you. How true that is. And the reason why I say that is because, yes, the way I see the world, the way that I engage with people, the way that I see problems, see solutions, see things that could be important, doesn't necessarily relate to the other people that are involved in this world, that are involved in my community, involved around me. And what I need to be able to do is to step out of my worldview, step out of my perspective, and be able to see things from other people's perspective, because what I could be doing could be impacting them in a negative way. Or what I could be doing has no connection to them at all. And I don't even know what it means to them by taking certain particular action. So for example, if I was to have the intention of building a, podcast, right? I had intention of building a podcast, and I was like, you know what, I'm building a podcast. I'm gonna bring around some people who want to be a part of this podcast and see what it is that they want to say, want to be a part of, or whatnot. But then I'm missing a completely different demographic who is not even related, associated with that. And there is a level of exclusion that's happening by me leaving those individuals out. And it could bring more detriment to the quote unquote good thing I'm potentially building if I do not include those other individuals, or include others' perspectives to make my podcast that much better. Let's take it to another level. Let's say that we're trying to build a safe space, right? Let's say we're trying to build a safe space within our workplace. And if we build a safe place in our workplace, we find that the process in which if we're building a safe space is having one perspective in mind, the leader's perspective in mind, right? But this leader does not take into account the most marginalized individual who is not in the room, or they do not fully understand how this safe space may not necessarily be safe for the person who is not the dominant culture, who doesn't have the dominant culture or those traits that represent that particular space. And if we do not have that worldview of the other, we could miss out on something that could potentially be beautiful, or even more beautiful than was created. But even worse, it could create damage and harm to the people that's around us, and continue to put up the blind spots for ourselves of not being inclusive or considerate or consider those individuals who are a part of this space. The world doesn't revolve around you, right? We need to be mindful and take into account the thoughts, the perspectives, the mindsets of those individuals who are a part of our community that may not necessarily have a dominant voice and be dominant in this culture. And it's truly prevalent. I mean, we can look at the white community versus the Latinx community, right? We can look at those who identify as male to those who identify as female or non-binary. We can look at those who have the ability who are able-bodied, or those who need more physical assistance in the way that they mobilize around the world. I mean, we can even look at those who are housed and unhoused. So there are so many different things in our world around us, and these problems that we see within our culture, there's problems that we see within our society, and we're trying to go about solving these problems in a way that is with our own worldview. But if we were able to take a step back, if we were able to take a step away, or be able to include voices and people who have a different perspective in that, we can then solve those problems and create that inclusive community where every identity belongs and thrives. So what I want to point out is not only that the world doesn't revolve around you, but you can create a worldview that is beyond yourself, that incorporates those other perspectives. And here's a couple things you can do that. Pull out the phone. Get my notes. Here we go. All right. So here are a couple of areas where you can practice incorporating a more inclusive worldview within your practices, within the things that you want to do. The first thing that you could do is just to be aware of the knowledge gaps. Be aware of the areas that you have a blind spot in. And sometimes you don't know you have a blind spot. You don't know what you don't know. But you can start by talking to people who know you well, who know what you're about, and can help shape or fill in those gaps that you may have on your own. And then once you become aware, doing the work necessary to then learn from their perspective, read the materials, engage with individuals in that way to help fill that gap for you, so that way that gap gets minimized in that work. All right. The next thing you can do is to you see all the shorthand. That's supposed to be a question mark. Ask questions and listen more. The more you ask, the more you begin to build this curiosity within yourself to understand how people are interpreting and experiencing a situation or a problem within their world. And then once we ask those questions, sit and listen, truly get a grasp, understand what it is that they're saying and feeling and experiencing as it helps shapes your perspective in the way that you lead. All right. So again, that's the question mark. That's the question mark. I'll trip it out here. Okay. Next thing is to consider the other. This is again the work that we necessarily need to be done as we are working to be aware of what is missing in our worldview, asking questions and listening to other people around us, and then in the actions that we are taking part in, we are continuing to assess, how does this impact the least of these? How does this impact those who greatly are affected by this decision? And we may need to just go specifically to that location and go to those people and to see the impact of our work, rather than just assume that the work that we're doing, the problems that we're solving, is fully supporting and helping those individuals, when it could potentially not. And that is even more dangerous, because then we sit in these ivory towers thinking that we are solving the world's problems, but as we are solving the problems, it's continuing to further the gap within our communities, and the bridges are breaking, because what we're posing as solutions is not really solutions at all. It's just more damage, right? So that ain't gonna work. Last thing we gotta do. Seek and uplift voices. Woo! This is gonna be fun. Seek and uplift voices, and this essentially is those voices that are diverse, that are not the same voice or the same perspective that you have. Considering in which we already recognize that there is a blind spot that we have in our world or in our worldview, and then we will go out to listen to those people. We're finding those voices and finding the people who can be able to help fill that for us. And that's not necessarily saying that, you're going to go up to the person who completely is different than you and say, yo, tell me your worldview. No, don't do that. Don't do that. It may mean reading books that are not of the same origin or ethnicity of yours or same perspective as yours. It may mean listening to YouTube's podcasts, things of that nature that are of different backgrounds to give you a perspective of how they see the world, because then that will inform you in the decisions that you make that to help them see the world. But then in the midst of that as well, not only are you seeking those voices, you're also uplifting those individuals as well, because they have power in what they are saying and speaking. And we can create a kind of a common ground and a middle ground for them to share what they feel, think, experience, and speak into the implementations of whatever project that we're trying to solve or problem that we're trying to solve. So again, we got to be aware of our knowledge. We got to listen and question, ask questions and be listened and be very curious in that way. Consider what other people are thinking and feeling in the things that we implement, and be able to seek and uplift the voices around us. These things are not the only things, but they help when it comes to understanding that the world does not revolve around us. There's other people in this space, other identities, other perspectives that we need to consider. And we have to adapt the way that we lead, adapt the way that we approach the world and the work and the solutions that we have to make sure that they're inclusive of the identities that are represented in this space. If you have found value in this, I'm learning as I continue to do this as well. I want to be sure that this is something that I practice on a regular basis. But if you're in a space where you are working towards expanding your worldview or finding a way to do that well in a very healthy and safe space, holla at me. I would love to have that conversation with you. You can buy me a coffee. We could have that conversation about what that process and journey looks like for you in growing and learning and expanding your perspectives, and being able to not just expand it for your individual self, but how does that implement in the institution as well, since those are the areas in which that we are inhabiting on a regular basis in everything that we operate within this societal system we call Earth, life, world, what have you. So thanks for engaging with this podcast. Thanks for engaging with the whiteboard session. If you found any value with this, again, let me know what you think. Buy me a coffee. Let's talk, let's connect, let's share this with a friend. I would love to learn more as well. What are you learning that is helping shape your worldview, that's helping shape your perspective? Be sure to follow the podcast, OTM Podcast. Follow me at Ray Devante, and the YouTube Raymond D. White. Find me on LinkedIn, all the spaces. I'll be sure to drop that in the show notes. But more importantly, continue to share your story with others. I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.